6 p.m. on Monday, June 1st. So I will call to order this meeting.
Indivisible. And I've been really struggling the last week about our country because we're so divided. And I'm just hoping that we as a community of the Onion City can really get our heads wrapped around what it means to be one and to work through our challenges. So that's my headset right now. But on a information note, the legislature has spent time and energy to help navigate, resolutions for folks struggling with the unemployment insurance and the pandemic unemployment assistance program. And we helped over 2,300 Vermonters get their issues resolved. And now there's a new link that we're passing off. So when folks are still struggling, can't get through on the phone, You can email me, hcolston@winooskivt.org, and I can pass on the link that allows people to kind of see their case, see where it is, and be able to access, hopefully, the information they need for resolution. So that's what I have.
Thanks, Hal.
Sure.
Amy?
Sure. So I'll just share that the Safe Healthy Connected People Commission is still not meeting at this time. So there aren't any updates from that group, but I'm going to be in touch with the chair this week just to see if folks are feeling differently, if maybe, we do want to hold a remote meeting. So I'll keep this group posted on the progress there.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, the Municipal Infrastructure Committee met, and we had a pretty good meeting, considering we haven't seen each other in a few months. Jim would be happy to know that Winooski received a city tree flag, and I had made the suggestion if there's an empty flagpole on a rotary, I think that'd be a great place to display that flag right in the center of the gateway of our city. We had a good discussion with Mr. Gamache and Mr. Carter about the Mansion Street project. It was recorded for Jesse. They were trying to make their street become a do not enter for Main to cut the traffic down because of the parking and the number of units of the building that's proposed to be built there, which I believe is zoned. I think they come to an agreement somewhat. I would have to ask the city if they could just keep in mind of the other side streets that may be impacted if Manson Street is granted the do not enter from Main Street. And the street I'm mainly concerned with would be Platt. I think Platt would become a huge cut across town if the Manson Street proposal for do not enter from Main would go through. We had discussed the pool, which is on the agenda, so I won't get into that, but I will get to that when it comes up on the agenda. And it was good to see everyone, and we had discussed if they would want to continue on meeting, and we had agreed that we think it's good to talk, to touch base in case, now that the weather's breaking, and the governor is losing the spigot a little bit on construction projects. So I think it's important for us to meet and discuss issues that are going on for our capital projects. And that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Since our last meeting, I was also able to attend the Working Communities Grant meeting that Jim well described earlier. And Hal also helped facilitate part of that meeting as a member of that. Well, you were there with someone else facilitating a session through a capacity outside of your role here on the council. So we talked about community engagement and how the session you led on dismantling racism. And I just wanted to call out that work as being the recent events that are occurring have really highlighted the priority of this work. And I'm really happy that we have a bit of a head start here, that we're already working towards trying to find solutions for our community to make sure we are supporting everyone. And if folks haven't seen yet, Front Porch Forum, our police chief's statement about our reaction to the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis and some of the efforts that we are making already, I encourage you to check that out. There is always more work to be done, but I'm grateful to live in a community where we look for solutions and are hopefully headed in the right direction. Looking forward to seeing that grant continue. I also had another Mayor's Coalition since our last meeting to discuss putting forward a public shared agenda of efforts we'd like to see the state take up to support our community in coming out of this pandemic. And I'm hoping that we will have a public statement out in the next week or so. Tomorrow, Jesse and I have both been invited to a meeting that Congressman Peter Welch is hosting with information about potential federal support that could be coming to municipalities. So we'll have updates on that soon as well. With that, I will pass it to Jesse for our city updates.
Great, thank you. I do have a number of updates tonight, so bear with me for a few minutes here. I too wanted to start where Hal and Christine both started with what the police chief in his statement said today was the appalling and tragic death of George Floyd. It's a really difficult time for our country as a whole and for our ability to maintain our unity, as Councillor Colson suggested. So as the mayor said, Chief Hebert did put out a statement today. It's on Front Porch Forum and on our website and our Facebook pages. I just wanted to read you an excerpt of it, if you don't mind, on behalf of the chief who's not with us tonight. But he says, from his point of view as police chief, to stand as a profession and condemn the actions of the officers involved in these many tragic events is a start, but we need to do so much more. Most importantly, police executives need to take steps to ensure the officers under their command are provided a culture that values equality, respect, human dignity, and the sanctity of human life. I think that's a really powerful statement from our chief, and I stand with him in condemning the officers involved in this tragic death and hope our community can stay united and strong and working towards more equality in the future. So having started there, I also want to spend a few minutes talking with you about the COVID-19 cluster that was announced in Winooski on Friday by the governor and Dr. Levine. This small cluster was announced at the press conference this past Friday. Over the weekend, we city staff worked with the Department of Health and the community health centers of Burlington and other community partners to put together a first come, first served testing site at the O'Brien Community Center today. It's a very quick turnaround. Today's event went very well. They had capacity to test 50 folks on a first come, first served basis. We tested 50 folks within the first hour and a half. The health department team and the city team stayed until 2 o'clock, the closing time, and registered anyone else who showed up at that testing site to be tested tomorrow and Wednesday at their request. So we have another, I think it's about 65 people signed up for tomorrow and Wednesday. Because of the advocacy we did and the school did with VDH over the weekend, they have reassigned resources to Winooski for the remainder of this week. So there will be testing availability at the O'Brien Community Center every day this week. They are reassigning. There was going to be, on Tuesday and Thursday, there were going to be testing sites in Essex. They've reassigned that staff to the O'Brien Community Center. And then Wednesday and Friday, CHCB, the Community Health Centers of Burlington, will perform that testing. All are first come, first serve, although you can sign up for appointments off of our website. So if you go to the city's website, click on the link for Winooski residents specifically, there is a registration. If people want to make appointments, they can also just walk up and be served, assuming that the testing capacity is there. So again, that's tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all at the O'Brien Community Center. Tuesday and Thursday start at 9. Wednesday and Friday start at 10. It's free. It's open to the public. A huge thanks to ALV and USCRI, who are coordinating translators. Per the reports on site today, that translation went incredibly well. So big thanks to them. I do want to make the comment that the health department, this is what the health department does. They respond to clusters like this. This is not necessarily abnormal in Winooski. It's them doing their good public health due diligence. In addition to these testing sites, they have also done all of the contact tracing for the folks who have tested positive. So they have reached out to folks who may be directly exposed and encouraged them to get tested. So if you have not been reached out to by VDH, you are more than welcome to come and be tested. But we really just recommend that, through the health department recommends that we continue to physically distance, wear face coverings with others, wash our hands, stay home if we're sick. All of the regular guidance is being provided. There's no special guidance being provided to Winooski at this point. This week of testing is in addition to testing that we had previously planned for June 9th and 23rd in Winooski. We were going to be among those pop-up locations as they're doing statewide. So we are continuing to hold those dates, and that opportunity will remain in place for our residents. So last notes on this, just want to really thank Ray, who was there all day today on site as the city staff person, as well as Liam Keating from the fire department and Claudine from Thrive and Officer Zeider from the police department as well. Thank you all for being there. And a huge thanks to the Department of Health and CHCB for moving so quickly to provide these services for our residents. If you do have questions, healthvermont.gov is still the #1 resource. We are also trying to push out resources through our website as well. Happy to answer any questions about that later in the agenda if you would like. I do want to highlight a few other related COVID-19 operational things from a city operations perspective. Chief Hebert wanted me to share with you that the JAG grant you approved application for last meeting was approved by the federal government. So that's, again, $33,390 coming to the city of Winooski to offset our COVID-related public safety costs. And then I wanted to make sure you all knew that in anticipation of Thrive starting up for summer operations based on the state guidance, we have brought back our children and families program manager from furlough. She is working to set up all of our systems to ensure that they are the program is safe and healthy for our families and kids when it opens later in June. And then we'll be bringing back all the Thrive teachers later in the month for training and preparation. I have a number of public works updates I want to give you quickly. We had a major flooding event on Friday afternoon with a big rainstorm. If you were along Main Street, you probably saw a big water luge starting. You may, if you've driven down Main Street in the last couple of days, you may have seen that the force of that water popped up the crack sealant that was installed last year around the rotary in those cracks between the cement plates. Public Works is working on that and hoping to bring back the vendor who did that work to repair it under warranty. So more to come on that, and also had quite a flooding event at the school that the fire department was able to support the school staff in addressing. You may have noticed if you frequent Manceau Street that it is, we have installed new no parking on one side of the street signs along that street to try and get back some real estate to allow specifically our public safety vehicles to make those tight turns in that back neighborhood. While the signs are up and we are receiving some good feedback from the neighbors about that, we will be doing education and not enforcement of that for several weeks to ensure that people are aware before we start ticketing anybody, but we do think it's an important public safety step. You may have seen an announcement that went out last week on some stormwater inventory work we're doing this June. It started today and goes through June 19th. It's in the southwest quadrant of the city, south of Pine and west of Maine. To do that work, we will be taking up some parking spaces, but we don't anticipate any road closures or parking or major traffic impacts during that work. And then finally, on a public works update, as you know, the Hickok Phase 2 work is finishing up this summer, hopefully. We had our bid opening today. We received 1 bid. We had anticipated receiving 3 bids, and it came in significantly over budget, almost $1 million over budget. So we are looking to rebid that work to be able to stay within budget that may have schedule impacts, but so I just wanted to give you a quick heads up tonight. More to come on that in the future. Councillor Duncan mentioned the Charter Commission starting to meet. They are meeting for their next public meeting tomorrow night via Zoom at 5:30 if folks want to join us. That information is on our website. And then finally, again, just to echo previous comments, thank you all to the folks who came out for Green Up Day. It was a great day in the city. We had over 140 volunteers and filled up 2 big dumpsters worth of trash from our city. So thank you all who participated in that great day, and hopefully there'll be more days like that to get together with one another soon. So, thank you, Christine.
Thanks, Jesse. So this brings us to our regular items on our agenda. The first item on our agenda is up for potential approval. This is a resolution asking the Burlington International Airport Director to apply for noise monitoring equipment funding. To provide some background on this item, last spring, the airport released an updated noise exposure map. The map shows where average aircraft noise exposure is higher than 65 decibels and is used to support a noise compatibility program that lets the airport access federal grant dollars to fund noise mitigation efforts. Those efforts could include home insulation as well as noise monitoring. Both of those items are included in the included as options in the program that was submitted to the FAA for approval. The FAA has to approve that program before the airport can then apply for grant funds based on it. And in the meantime, they've been getting into details on how to implement and fund the program. It's anticipated that approval will come in late summer and the grant would be applied for in the fall with the actual work then to begin next year. So that timeline has been in place since last year. And it seems now residents are asking the airport to apply for funding early this month, specifically just for the noise monitoring component. I do want to make clear that I have had discussions with the airport leadership in that noise monitoring is still under consideration as part of the program, as it has been all along, and that they are planning to provide a status update later this month, including how the implementation is going, how funding is looking, and that is a point where we could also discuss, having more information there, what the implications are around insulation, noise monitoring, et cetera. The city of Winooski has in the past advocated primarily for home insulation, also for the noise monitoring, and for focusing work in areas with more density and more children. We have that public statement attached to our agenda this evening. And so I think the question that is on this resolution is whether there is a need to speed up the application for one component of the program instead of the original timeline. So,
the police coming. Young nigga got it back.
Can we? Okay. Jim, I know this is something that you had asked to be included. Want to open to you or to any other counselors for questions or comments first.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think you've explained it very well. I think we've seen a lot of advocacy on this from constituents here in Winooski, as well as others in the larger community that are interested in this issue in particular. I think, as you pointed out, we've included this in our public comment as a city through unanimous approval. So I do see this resolution as just reinforcing a particular point in that public comment. And I think this comes down to making it known where we are facing the greatest exposure in our community. We don't, if someone asks me if they can send their kids to walk to school or go to a park for a concert, when the F-35s will be flying, I'll say, I have no idea how loud it's going to be. You can look at your phone, but that's not really accurate. These professional noise monitoring systems provide information we do not have and that we won't ever get without some professional noise monitoring system. So while we are still waiting for sound mitigation funds to come, the metric of whether or not that sound insulation is working and is working for those most exposed and most vulnerable won't be answerable until we have this system. So even as we start to insulate homes, I think we got to be clear that this noise monitoring system is important for our community to understand what level of environmental pollution our housebound seniors, our kids are being exposed to. And this has come up in our public comment sessions we've had in council and at the technical advisory committee meetings at the airport. So it's not a new request, it's just reinforcing an existing request and making it clear that this is something that our community thinks we need. So I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this today. And I know there's been a lot of back and forth in our email as counselors, and I'm sure other discussions ongoing. So I'll kind of yield there, but I'm happy to answer any questions on my motivation or other concerns that I've been hearing from our constituents.
Thanks. Are there questions from other counselors? I do see that the airport leadership has joined our call this evening as well. So if there are, I'll put them on the spot and say if we do have questions, they are here to answer. I will add, Jim, to your point about this reinforcing something we have already asked for. I can sort of see that. I'm not sure why we need to demand action earlier than the timeline that we have been working on since the beginning. And I'm not sure how that impacts the work that this airport staff and consultants are already doing, thinking of the broader program as a whole and the broader funding structure to just pull out and focus on a single piece of the program. That's something that I frankly have concerns about.
And I would say this is ultimately a decision that the airport will make in consultation with the owners in Burlington. But I think that I think there is a case to be made that noise monitoring is needed now. I mean, sound isolation is needed now as well, but the money that is needed to mobilize for a sound monitoring system is pennies on the dollar compared to what we need for sound insulation for our city. So I think that if there is one piece to advocate for early, this is it, because we can advocate for $1 million of spending on home installation, but that's going to buy us almost zero mitigation. I think the noise monitoring piece will give us immediate understanding as a community when and where to avoid if we are interested in avoiding exposure to damaging noise levels. And I, as a parent, I personally am concerned about playing outside with my kids. We're right under the flight path. And I think that is something that we have to consider as an immediate environmental awareness need that we have. That sound mitigation funds will not come to my house, and they will not come to many other houses that are impacted by high peak noises. The noise mitigation program is meant to focus on aggregate noise exposure. So this noise monitoring system allows us to understand where in the city will be unsafe when the F-35s are flying, if you consider the data that exposure to these noise levels is dangerous.
Any other council comments before we move to the public comment section?
Mayor, I have a question, and hopefully Jean can answer this. If we were not, if the noise monitoring was not part of the grant that is being applied for in the fall, when is our next opportunity to apply for that?
I'd be happy to answer that as well, Jean.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Hello, my name is Nick Longo. I'm the Deputy Director of Aviation at the airport. That's a great question. And annually, and sometimes multiple times a year, depending on the federal funding level, we are able to apply for grant funds. That's highly contingent on the Federal Aviation Administration overall budget, and then as it's allocated out to each region. But typically and normally, annually, we would be able to apply.
Thank you, Nick.
And Mayor, I do have some comments when ready. I'd be happy to add to the conversation.
Sure. Hal?
Thank you, Mayor Lott. As a politician, I have a process for how I support issues. First and foremost, I vote my conscience. Second, I vote for my constituents. And third, my party. And I have heard from 29, 30 people who are in support of this resolution, and there was one naysayer. So this is our community speaking out. We need to figure this out. And I think without data, how are we going to figure out what the problem really is? So that's where I'm coming from. And I'm speaking for my constituents, and I think we should support this resolution.
Thanks, Hal. So I think we can open it to public comment. I would like to let Nick and the airport make the first statement to clarify what is being asked of them and what they are currently planning as it relates to noise monitoring. Jean or who would like to take that?
I'd like to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We've also received, many of the emails and letters from folks, probably around 50. And we as a team have, as you know, given all the community leaders a call and let them know that we've received these concerns, many of our city councilors as well as yours in South Burlington. And we are pulling together, and as I told Jimmy Lees and others, Hal and Mike today, and that we are working to pull together a grant. And I'm hoping to have something put together by the end of the week. I just want to make sure that we can get the information that we need from our sound consultants. Typically, these things take a lot more time. We've had some conversations, with the FAA about what we're proposing. We are really concerned. It's not just about getting a grant. It's about what happens if you get this grant. What airport resources are used that won't be able to be used for other grants? And currently we have no airport resources. We are in pretty rough shape. Our employments are down from 15,000 a week to 1,000. So when we do sign a grant, we have to say we either do or don't have the funds, or we're able to do what we say we're going to do. We are looking at that, and we're trying to find other ways to apply for the grant. We want to make sure it doesn't hurt the program that we've already discussed with the community. And so it is my intent to try to do something by the 15th. And I'm doing everything that I can with the time that I have available to meet the requests of the community. I will say that I certainly appreciate everybody's passion and concerns. But I think that we probably should be working in another area. And I do think that I will, and I'm not saying I won't, I will do my very best to get this grant in. But I believe we should be working and talking to the Department of Defense. They brought this F-35 here. They have a budget that's much bigger than the airport ever will. And I believe that's an accessory that should be coming to all communities when they bring the F-35 to the community. And it's something that if it's the community needs it and wants to feel and would feel better with that accessory, I think it should come with the aircraft. So I think that maybe we need to have another conversation after this deadline and maybe figure out if there's another way to get additional dollars or to ensure that we're going to get this noise monitoring system. I think it's important. There's certainly a lot of really concerned people, as all of you have said, and we certainly want to play our role as an airport. But I think there's another partner that we need to tap and we need to work with, and we need to do that together. We need to unify that request and not divide. So that would be my recommendation. In the next couple of weeks after we do this, I will be able to let you know by the end of the week, where we're going to be with our request. I've met with my team the beginning of last week and again this morning, to come up with, how we might do what we're going to do. We've also reached out to the FAA and let them know that we may be doing this. And we have other competing grants that are out there right now that we've been working on for up to 3 years. So I am committed to doing what I can do. I also believe in the process, that we've worked to, which is really important. Nick Longo put a lot of effort with the leadership in Winooski and South Burlington to follow the protocol of the FAA. But I'm also committed to people and their concerns, and I'm going to do everything I can to address the request. Nick, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do, and I wholeheartedly agree with Gene and Councillor Colston. I agree that we do have to figure this out, and I do want to make sure that and make sure that what I'm relaying isn't a debate of any kind, because I truly do want to give the appropriate information or the appropriate resources on these particular programs, which are not straightforward and somewhat very complicated, both on the funding and the implementation side of things. I do want to clarify that these noise monitors are going to be picking up single event levels, not associated with the noise maps that we have published. Meaning, when you hear an F-35 depart, you may hear them in the 110 plus decibel ranges, not in the average ranges that the FAA requires as part of these noise exposure maps. Also within the resolution, there was mention of an RFQ, and I just want to make sure we're aware of what that RFQ was and the intention at the time of what that was, as well as our conversations at the Technical Advisory Committee. That RFQ for what was called an ANOM system, or an Automatic Noise and Operations Management System, was actually a photography, a camera based at the airport that would take pictures of aircraft as they departed and associate those with radar track data. They were not noise monitors at all. We do have, since Gene's direction on the application process for the grant this year, we do have updated budgetary numbers as well. And then one of the maybe more important items is collecting of the data, while extremely useful to show in a public platform. Seattle, Boston, and I know Westchester County also has these accessible online systems to view live noise. This does not change our noise exposure map. In fact, the only regulated way for the FAA to accept a noise exposure map is through modeling alone. And the reason I mention that is because it will not change the priority of the implementation of sound mitigation. It does confirm, and it would confirm and possibly adjust our data input into the models as we proceed into future years, but it wouldn't change the actual noise exposure map and the implementation of our programs this year. And I also just real quickly want to point out, everything is online at btvsound.com. So the noise exposure maps, the noise compatibility programs, and everything in between is located on that website and available to anybody today. Thank you, Mayor Lott.
Thank you. I'm going to start with, I had some folks who alerted us they wanted to speak ahead of the meeting. So I would like to call on Joanna Rankin first. Did you still want to speak? You are on mute.
Thank you, councilors, very much for letting me speak. And I think the important thing to remember about noise monitoring and tracking is that it allows us to assess the health and social risks of the airplanes flying out of Burlington Airport. We have a somewhat extreme situation here, but Westchester Airport is a completely commercial airport, and it's had noise monitoring and tracking for many years, with people behind forging better community relations with the people who surround the airport. If we'd had noise tracking and measuring at Burlington Airport for the last couple of decades, the relationships between the airport and the communities might be very different. There might still be a community facing the airport now rather than torn down houses. It's absolutely true that noise monitoring and tracking has little to do with negotiating the payments from the FAA for noise mitigation, but it has everything to do with the health risks that many people and many children and many schools will be negotiating with the extreme noise events from the airport. So it's about health. And that request for this kind of information goes back a long ways. It goes back to a Department of Health request from, I think, 2008. Another thing to just put on the table is that the airport could have applied for funds to do this work anytime in the last dozen or maybe even longer ago years. And it's a tiny amount of money compared to what has been.
The police coming straight from the underground. A young nigga got it back because I'm burning.
Well, that's exciting.
What's going on there anyway?
It's a tiny amount of money compared to what's already been spent to tear down houses and buy property. And it's a tiny amount of money compared to what may be acquired from the FAA to do further mitigation. So thank you very much. Thank you for considering this very important resolution.
Thank you. I think there's Jean S. that also indicated they would like to speak.
Mayor, I think that was my mistake. I think that was Joanne.
Okay. So if you can use the raise hand feature that is in the participant panel of the meeting, you can indicate by raising your video hand. Looks like James Lease would like to speak next.
Hi, I'm James Lease. I'm a patent attorney, but I was an engineer for IBM for 20 years, where I was involved in making measurements, analyzing data, and reporting data and making recommendations based on data. And the company was data-driven, and there was a keen appreciation for meaningful data. And I've become aware from George Cross that the Winooski, under the current city council and city manager, also care about making decisions based on the data. So let's look at the airport noise data that we actually have up to now, and we don't have any. The noise exposure map, first of all, is just an average. It's not actual data. It's not based on actual data. The averages at each location on the map are based on a computer model of the expected noise of the various airplanes, not actual measurements. And the noise model hasn't been verified with actual measurements. And that's what would happen with this noise monitoring system. It would provide the actual measurements to verify and update the model, as Gene pointed out in his remarks. Furthermore, there's one other thing about the model. It averages, as I think Nick pointed out, it averages the noise over 24 hours and over 365 days a year. It doesn't really represent the actual experience of a few minutes of extremely high noise followed by about 23 hours and 50 minutes of very low noise. So the average level is only loosely related to the damage the actual noise can do to hearing and learning and the cognitive development of children. Therefore, the average noise is not really the kind of good data that we'd like to have for planning or decision making. We need actual noise measurements at various locations in all the communities affected by aircraft noise. And that's what this resolution asks the airport to get by applying for an FAA grant for the noise monitoring and tracking system. And I hope you'll vote yes on the resolution. I just want to make one slight correction to something that Mayor Lott mentioned, and that's about dates. There is, as Gene and Nick pointed out, there is an annual deadline for applying for grants. And this year, it was extended to the middle of June. And I think Gene mentioned the 15th a couple of times in his remarks. That's what he was talking about. The deadline for 2020 is in mid-June. So that's why there's the urgency to get this application in by that deadline. Anything submitted after that deadline will have to wait till 2021 before it is even considered. Once the FAA gets the application, then they go to a process where they apply to Congress for an appropriation. Congress makes the appropriation, and then the money becomes available in the spring of the following year. So if we get our application in by mid-June, the money might become available in the spring of 2021. If we wait till after mid-June, it will be 2022. And that's a long time to wait in view of the fact that the F-35 jets are here now. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask Nick or Gene to clarify the current timeline that we've been working towards.
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Lees is correct. Typically, there is a grant deadline of May 1st every year. This year, it was extended to June 15th because of COVID-19, and the FAA, of course, is all working from home. However, grant applications can be submitted at any time of the year. There, of course, is no guarantee, just like submitting a grant application prior to the deadline of grant funds coming that year. This is the first I've heard of grant funding being carried over into future years. Typically, our entire grant program, from our capital projects, our capital equipment purchases, and our noise program is highly coordinated with the FAA on an annual basis. Meaning we have a capital improvement plan with the FAA, and every year, as Mr. Lees indicated, every year the Congress would appropriate certain funds based on this cumulative capital plan from all airports. I am unaware of this moving over into next year, whether we apply before or after June 15th. But again, I do not know the federal appropriation of the noise program itself, which again is highly methodical on where those funds are coming from a total standpoint of FAA Airport Improvement Program funding. Did that help a little bit?
Yeah, and I also want to clarify, I believe Mr. Lees, you said that this data would help us update the map, and Nick clearly said that it won't. It could not be used to change the map or redirect the funding or priorities. Sorry.
I was going to say that's correct, Mayor Lott.
Could I ask one clarification?
What Joanna spoke about wanting this information for public health, yes, it cannot be used for the actual noise mitigation funding. It's not going to direct that, is what I'm saying, is what I'm hearing. Councilor Duncan?
I just wanted to clarify one thing, because Nick, in your comments, you mentioned that in future noise exposure map development, these data might go into the updated modeling for noise exposure modeling, so that without these systems, future noise exposure maps will be based on what we already know for data. With these noise monitoring systems, future noise exposure maps, the modeling might include these data points. Is that just, can you confirm, because I'm a little confused?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Correct. Our existing map uses modeled information. Our future maps will only use modeled information. The data that's collected as part of this entire system will be the radar track data. And that data can confirm and or update our existing noise exposure map. Meaning if an aircraft or multiple aircraft veer to the left on departure for a certain period of time, we can update that in the model. Our consultants can update that in the model, which correlates to how those contour lines are drawn out. The data collected from noise monitors are not used within a noise exposure map.
Thank you for clarifying. So it's the track data, not the noise monitor data, that would update the noise exposure maps in the future.
That's correct. And in our existing noise map, we did use radar track data for an entire 1 year period of time using actual radar data.
Thank you.
And that is in online and shown on some heat maps online.
Thanks. I think we do still have Jean on the line, who had preemptively asked to speak.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi. First, I wanted to.
And please introduce yourself first. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Jean. My name is Jean Saisani. I've lived in Winooski for almost 10 years. And since the beginning, when I bought my home here, I tried repeatedly to get noise exposure maps to make sure that I wasn't in a noise zone because I was concerned about it. I spoke to the previous city manager. I've forgotten her name. What was her name? Your city manager in Winooski. Anyway, she didn't have it. The city of South Burlington did not have it. Everywhere I was sent, I was given the runaround. Here's what I want to say is that what we've learned from our president and from the actions of some police departments around the country is that we should always question authority, always. And I've learned that there's so many different interests here. What I want to remind Winooski is that in 2008, 10 airplanes were flown in from Air Guard in Montana with Block 30 engines with big mouth inlet, creating more noise. And those that were not flown in, the local F-16s were retrofitted with external fuel tanks so they could have their new mission to go overseas and fight foreign wars instead of the defensive model of defending us from Canada here. What I want to say is all of this was done under the radar. The Vermont Air Guard did not do any environmental impact statement. The airport did nothing whatsoever. And so I think this noise monitoring equipment will help, and it can help for radar tracking data for the future, because we don't have confidence, many of us, that this plane will be able to successfully take off on a short 8,000 foot or 8,500 foot runway, which is short for the weight of this plane, and that the afterburner is debatable. I think that they will have to use it, but that's just a layperson's opinion. I think that Winooski really needs to keep its eye on the ball here. We are Burlington's ugly stepsister and have really no representation on the airport commission. I mean, they do humor us and let you say what you think, but do nothing with the information. So I just want to say that I think this noise monitoring equipment is so important for the health of safety, particularly of children with small ear canals whose single event noise can cause hearing damage. And we need to know the locations where that's happening. And I thank you for letting me speak. I'm pretty upset about this because I feel that over the years that we have been jerked around quite a bit, and we were not always given transparent information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I think we have James Ellers on the line has asked to speak. Perhaps not. Perhaps we have lost him. Others who are interested in making public comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Sure, Marguerite Edelman.
Okay, this is Marguerite Edelman. I also am a Winooski resident, and I want to urge that the council tonight vote yes on this resolution, asking the Burlington International Airport to apply for the FAA grant for sound monitoring and tracking by mid-June. One of the reasons I think we're at this point is that so many council members from Burlington, South Burlington, and Winooski have spoken with Gene, and it seems to have made some difference in us being heard. I was pleased to hear Gene say that he's coming around to applying for this grant by the mid-June deadline. And I feel like all these phone calls and conversations have really helped to clarify and correct a lot of misinformation that has been put forward. Misinformation I felt has been put forward to deter us from even asking for the sound monitoring and tracking grant with the FAA. You know, first of all, I was originally told that we couldn't apply for it because we didn't have an NCP that included it. Well, that ended up being incorrect. We have been able to apply for this grant for years, as Joanna Rankin pointed out, and we can apply for more than one FAA grant at a time. So there's no reason, and we have nothing to lose by passing this resolution and encouraging the airport to pass and get this FAA grant in. The actual tracking system represents less than 1% of the monies that we need for the sound mitigation, which is going to take 26 plus years, and it's going to have to be applied for every single year. And by the time they get to Winooski, I don't know when that will be. I'll probably be dead. Because that's a long time to only do 100 houses a year. And I remember that quite clearly when we met with Richard Doucette at the airport open houses about the FA35s. I know there's concern about the airport's portion, the city's portion of the grant, the 10%. But historically, from what I understand, the city has paid 4% and sometimes 2%, and the other portions have been picked up by others. And maybe we can approach Leahy and Sanders and others and see if we can get that money. But it's such a small amount that this money needs to be spent on the sound monitoring and tracking. And I would just say that, you know, I heard from Nick in one of the email responses to me that it was an if we applied for this sound monitoring and tracking, depending on what the communities wanted and the public input about it. Well, we know for a fact that there's pages and pages of documents of people asking for the sound monitoring and tracking. Let's pass this resolution so that we don't have to keep coming to our city council and to all of you guys over and over and over again, begging that this system be put in place. If you have a resolution, we don't have to ask again and again and again. We'll certainly go. But I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm getting tired of having to say the same thing over and over and over again. And I would just say one last thing about sound. I'm a person who is partially deaf from birth. And I grew up outside of Chicago, right next to O'Hara Field. And I can tell you that children lose a lot in the classroom, even if they don't have full hearing, and even if they do have full hearing. And we are jeopardizing the learning of our children. We are jeopardizing them in so many ways. We can't protect anyone in the summer who doesn't have air conditioning with sound mitigation, who doesn't have the ability to go away, far away from the city. They're going to be here. And I can tell you, as a person with hearing disability, that it is a horrible, horrible burden. And to know where these areas are in the city can make a difference. It can be hugely important to people with hearing disabilities and hopefully avoiding people getting hearing disabilities. So to me, I urge you to vote yes. We need the scientific data. We need it soon. We can't wait till 2022. And that's why one reason I started weeks ago pushing, trying to get this information, and have felt like I've gotten the runaround, just like Jean Sassani said. And I don't think we need to stand for that. Pass the resolution, put it in writing, say that, yes, we want this firmly for our city of Winooski. Thank you.
Thanks, Marguerite. I see Terry Zigman has her hand raised. Terry?
Hi. Hi, I'm Terry Zigmund. I live on West Street. I'm not in the 65 DBL zone. I've lived here since 1999. Homeowner, taxpayer, very involved member of the community. And I'm just going to be really quick and just ask for the city council, please, to pass this resolution, to support this, to ask for the sound monitoring. I agree with everything that all the other members of the community have said already. All the information that we have now is based on computer modeling. We don't have any real data for what's happening in our city and around our city. So I would like to see this noise monitoring resolution pass. And I would like to see the airport actually make an effort and get the noise monitoring systems. It's pretty obvious why they don't want them. I would like to see them get them. So that's all that I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think James Ellers wanted to try again. Are you able to unmute yourself, James? Perhaps not. Are there any other folks who wanted to make a public comment?
Yes, Mayor Lott, I would. My name is Robert Ackland, and I'm a teacher education professor at SUNY Plattsburgh. So I have, in my professional career, focused on children's learning. I wanted to let you know what it's like to hear 6 F-35s go over. They go over at about 1 every 10 seconds, and they go directly over all of our homes in Winooski, which is where we live. So thank you, Mr. Longo, for indicating that the sound monitoring equipment is going to give us information about single events, because single events is what we actually hear. And if the single event is actually at 118 to 125 decibels, which was something that was set up by an independent party who had sound monitoring equipment, which is more accurate than cell phones, for instance. It's like a thunderclap. And I sent this out to all of the city councilors this morning. So you're underneath a thunderclap 6 times every 10 seconds, 6 times. That's what we're being exposed to. And that is what we're going to be able to know more about because of the funding that comes through from this grant. Please vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
This is James Ellers.
Please go ahead.
You can hear me this time?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent. My name is James Ellers. I'm a Winooski resident. I live on Canal Street. First, thanks to all of you for putting this on the agenda, and I want to thank Councilor Colston and Duncan for already affirming their support. I don't have anything to add to the actual specifics around the metrics that we're looking for with this study. What I want to speak to is the aspect of trust. I'm a veteran, a former naval officer, spent quite a bit of time on flight lines, and given the fact that the mayor of Burlington has already disregarded his constituents, we have absolutely no trust as Winooski residents that the Burlington mayor, the airport authorities care one bit about us and our well-being. So we're looking to you, Madam Mayor, city councilors, we're looking to you to get us the information so that we can protect ourselves. As has said so well before by others, there is no mitigation for those of us who don't have climate-controlled dwellings and who want to be able to be outside in our own community. And I can tell you that my experience personally is I have to literally drop things when they're in my hands to cover my ears when those aircraft go overhead. And I would like to know what my kids will be exposed to. And I would also like to know the schedule so that if I have to live with these things here because I choose to stay in Winooski, then I can protect myself. Or if I'm not going to be able to access that information, then those of us who want to be able to protect ourselves can find another community where we don't have to endure this abuse. So we look to you, city councilors, Madam Mayor, as the ones we can trust to help us protect ourselves. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for all of your service to the community. I know how thankless it can be at times. Hope you get out to enjoy the sunset this evening.
Thank you. I do want to just make a comment for those who don't know. The flying schedule, the standard flying schedule, is posted on the Winooski website. Maybe Paul can share the link. It escapes me what it is, the page with the noise information. We also often get updates from the Guard when they're going to change the schedule and share those out through our formal channels, but we do not 100% receive, like they can make changes and not tell us, but the general flying schedule information is available for those who are looking. Are there any other folks who want to make a public comment? All right, I would turn it back into council. Do folks have remaining questions or thoughts to share?
I would just add that I agree with a lot of what has been said tonight on the phone and here on Zoom. I think that, you know, we need to rely on science and on data, and computer modeling is not that. I think that Councillor Duncan made a really good point that, you know, this is going to show us areas where we could potentially avoid in the future. Maybe it's not going to change the map right away, but at least it would give us and people in the community a heads up about high decibel areas. So I would definitely be in favor of this resolution tonight.
Thanks, Amy.
Hey, could I say something?
Sure.
I'd like to thank everyone that sent us respectful and thoughtful emails, and the people that have joined our meeting. Not very often we have more than 6 people at a time at our council meeting. My question to most of you is, have we tried to go outside? Have we tried other channels, such as our state representatives, state senators, Senator Leahy? Have we tried to get hold of the Department of Defense and voice your concerns? Because like Mr. Richards said, I think there's a need for a partnership on this, especially during this time. I hate to think of budget-wise right now, but I have to understand that the airport must be having a real financial hardship right now, being that the numbers of travelers going to the airport are so low. And is it going to cost the airport any more money? And is that something that's going to be able to happen even if they do apply for the grant and get the grant? Are we going to put our airport even more below the red tape. That was my statement, and I'd like to know if anyone of you have tried to email the Defense Department, and if anyone has received any feedback or any feedback from our congressmen or state senators.
I think the answer is for sure yes, Mike. I have seen constituent messages go out to congressional delegation members. I believe that Gene perhaps has had some conversations about Department of Defense funding. I don't want to speak for him, though. I don't know any details there. I know it is something that we have been discussing since the beginning, that it's somewhere that we should be investigating for funding here. Gene, did you want to address that?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have talked to the Guard, and when the letters started coming in just a few weeks ago, and I think it was after I talked to you as well. I mean, it was something I think I talked to people about this, that it was something that I thought we needed help on. And I thought it was also the responsibility of the Department of Defense. So I did reach out to the Guard, and what I received from them was that they, this wasn't part of their program, but I will continue to reach out to others, and I will continue to pursue it. I think I agree, that we need to look for a venue that's something that can last for a long time, and that the monitoring set up. I believe with the F-35, it would be great that if it came with the F-35, it is a huge burden, for the airport. Number one, we should not be monitoring noise or sounding. That's not what we're proficient in. So as part of, when we do write the grant, I will be asking for an engineer, a third party to review this information. I don't want the community to say the airport didn't do it correctly. It's pretty obvious. It's not what we do. We hire consultants for those things because they're experts. But I guess what I'm saying is I have asked, I didn't get the right answer. I think as a community, we need to continue working and asking for this and seeing what we can do to get it. I think it's important. I think it does need to come from the Department of Defense eventually.
Thanks, Gene. Any other questions, or Jim, were you raising your hand?
I was earlier. This time I was just adjusting volume on my headset. But since I have the mic open, I just want to thank Mr. Richards and Mr. Longo for being here. I know this is a lot to add on to their days, and I've learned things, and I also just appreciate them taking the time to engage on this. And I hope that if we do pass this resolution, that we are also committing to being partners in supporting any other efforts that you two need to get advocate for this funding to come from where you think it should as well. So if this isn't however this plays out, where there's an opportunity that Winooski can support what you're trying to do, we would love to. I hope that council will also support those advocacy efforts.
And I would like to add to that. I have seen a lot of misinformation in the emails that I've been receiving, and I think it would behoove the airport to share some sort of public update. I don't want folks to hear about this monitoring and think that it's going to change the mitigation program, right? Like, it's important that folks understand that this data is useful from that public health perspective, but it's not going to change the map. And I just want to make sure that people understand what is really available and what they're getting from a system like this. But we are, of course, have been in discussion since the beginning of the map release, and would certainly continue to advocate, with you to funding partners and to try to get the best program that we can. It sounds like we're ready to take a vote. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution asking the Burlington International Airport Director to apply for noise monitoring.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you everyone for contributing your voices this evening.
Thank you, Council.
And I really appreciate yes, you guys joining to be able to answer some questions.
Of course.
So we are going to move on to the next item on the agenda. This is a public hearing for Chapter 28 fee chapter updates, which we discussed at our last meeting. I would like to open the public hearing. Is anyone here? Did anyone join us for the purpose of this public hearing? Want to? Oh, I should let Jesse. I should let you do your introduction first of the item.
That's fine. No huge introduction needed. This is our annual fee ordinance update with as we approach the FY21 budget. These fees as proposed are what was discussed during the budget process, and then some additional cleanup items. It is what we talked about at your last meeting. So really this is just the required public hearing.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing and hearing none, I would close the public hearing. Is there any additional question or comment from council? All right, so we can move on to our next item. This is an item for approval. It is Winooski Small Business Loan COVID-19 Relief.
Sorry, Christine.
Did I miss a step?
If you are, the council can approve this ordinance change tonight if you are willing to do it.
Would someone like to move to approve the ordinance change? The Chapter 26 fee chapter updates.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for catching that, Jesse.
Yep.
Now moving on to Heather Carrington brings us another loan recommendation.
Thank you. As you know, in early April, you all approved use of up to $200,000 of our Winooski Small Business Loan Funds for COVID-19 relief funds. Thus far, you have approved 5 of those loans for a total amount of $41,500. And we've received an additional loan application since then, which the Winooski Small Business Loan Committee met to evaluate on May 27th. That loan is for $10,000 for the Last Stop Sports Bar, and the committee evaluated it and recommends approval of that loan in the full amount requested. If City Council votes to approve this loan as recommended by the committee, the relief loan program will retain $148,500 for future applicants.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
I'd like to make a statement about that business. That business is a great business for the city of Winooski. They do a lot for the residents, especially during the holidays. They run a Thanksgiving dinner down there when they do a clothing drive, and I think this is what this loan application is for. Businesses like this, and they are very great people, and they do a lot for our community.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions from the public? So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Winooski Small Business Loan COVID-19 Relief Loan for Last Stop.
So moved.
Motion by Mike, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is a resolution temporarily suspending action on local outdoor consumption permit. Heather?
Yep, that's me again. Okay, so on May 22nd, the governor issued Addendum 15 to the executive order for Stay Home, Stay Safe to allow the limited resumption of restaurant and bar operations. The addendum amended the rules of the Board of the Department of Liquor and Lottery to allow first, third, and fourth class licensees to offer outdoor consumption of beverage alcohol with or independent of the sale of food. enforcement of all municipal ordinances and regulations requiring an applicant to receive an approval or permit for outdoor food and beverage service is suspended by the executive order until such time as the local jurisdiction has acted to disapprove or condition an outdoor consumption permit. Applicants have until June 12th to obtain the approval of the local jurisdiction, and they're allowed to operate in accordance with the DLL permit pending that determination. If a local jurisdiction fails to impose conditions on or disapprove an outdoor consumption permit on or before June 12th, 2020, the permit shall be deemed approved. So staff recommends that based on that, City Council pass the resolution to suspend all action on outdoor consumption permit applications until after the June 12th deadline has passed. And thus you would effectively be approving all the local permitting for all outdoor consumption permits approved at the state level. This will streamline and create predictability in the process for our local businesses and help them to get through this challenging time with the pandemic.
I want to thank you as staff for bringing this creative solution. Maybe it's a small item, but some way to help our business community get moving quickly as becomes possible. So thank you for that. Are there any?
I want to thank our city manager for that because it was very good.
Great job. Great job. Are there any questions or concerns from council on this item? Jim?
I guess I just want to understand what role we would or would not have if there was any businesses that now will have a permit to operate past June 15th, presumably from their state permit. Do we still maintain some oversight and options if there are problems with outdoor consumption in June 20th? Do we still, who will then administer the compliance in that permit?
That's a really good question.
Heather, you want me to take that?
I know you were going to jump in.
So we as a city still maintain all of our enforcement authority and our partnership with Department of Liquor Control if there is ever an issue on a permit, whether it's been issued at the state level or the local level. So we're not giving up any of our enforcement authority here. Basically what we're saying is because we don't have a meeting between now and the day these permits go into effect, we wanted to give the businesses a firm sense of security that we weren't going to inject into the process, that we were going to allow the state process to play out. It really is a very time delineated thing to give them some certainty. We still retain all of our enforcement powers if something goes wrong.
And that includes revocation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Seeing and hearing none, I would bring it back to the council for a motion to approve a resolution temporarily suspending action on local outdoor consumption permit applications until June 15th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. So next up is approval for a sidewalk permit for Papa Frank's. Heather.
Yep, that's me again. So we've received an application for a sidewalk usage permit for about 120 square feet on West Center Street in front of Papa Frank's restaurant for outdoor seating. And this is part of an overall approach trying to accommodate as many businesses as we possibly can in having outdoor space available to them. So what staff proposes is to close the north sidewalk of West Center Street between Main and Follett Street, with the exception of the ADA curb aprons at the corners, to allow continued ADA accessibility, and then reroute pedestrian traffic to the south side of Center Street so there is a space available for Papa Frank's to have outdoor seating. In addition, I've included in your packet a map of a proposal to shut down the on-street parking. This is not part of the sidewalk permit, but an overview of some of the things that we're proposing to allow for more businesses to have outside space.
Thanks, Heather.
Yes.
I again, I think this is great in trying to find solutions to help get as much business activity as we can, given the restrictions that are coming. And I also, permitting usage of this sidewalk while diverting traffic to the other side of the street is something that we have done on other streets as well. So there is precedent for this. There's still that ADA accessibility. And, we have that sort of goal of having at least one sidewalk per street. So I think, to me, this feels very in line with those items.
But I'd like to, if I just can, for any business owners who are watching, anyone who has a request for this can come directly through me at the city, and I will facilitate walking through the process of trying to create a space and accommodate as much as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mike, you have a comment.
Yes, I do. Pending approval on this, does the city have any temporary signs to put in for pedestrians, not only for the sidewalks, but for the roadway, so we can try to slow traffic down a little bit? I know if there's seating out there with pedestrians, it might be a good idea if we have temporary signage to put in to kind of, because I know people sometimes they come off that rotary and they go pretty fast that stop sign in front of Papa Frank's. And I was just
around that corner.
Around that corner. Is there can we put a plan? Is there a sign up, something temporary we could put in just for safety, just so there is no accident?
We will certainly be blocking off the sidewalk and making it clear that sidewalk is closed, so that we're diverting pedestrian traffic right at the corner. So we're not having people start down the sidewalk and then have to turn around and go back. So that absolutely will be there. In terms of the bigger plan that I included in your packet, showing some of the parking spaces being used as outdoor space, we would be blocking off that area and all vehicular access with jersey barriers, so you won't have cars whipping down into that lane. The cars will be blocked entirely. So that's one of the safety precautions that we're taking, but we will certainly try to make as much clear signage as we can through this process. And, more to come on that as I get more requests.
Perfect, because I think that would be a great addition to Papa Frank's. Everyone knows that place is a family-friendly neighborhood restaurant. I think putting some tables outside might give it some more appeal. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Jim?
Just a quick one on the parking, removal of parking and closing that out for outdoor seating. I'm just curious, have the business owners there weighed in on the trade-off between having outdoor seating accessible with reduced access for pickup of takeout orders? Has that seemed like that balance will work for them?
Yes, actually, I held a meeting with businesses with downtown Winooski, I think a week and a half ago. And while we did not have every business, we did have the businesses on that block, except Mule Bar. And then we had Misery Way in as well. And we had actually been looking at closing both of those blocks and received some feedback that Misery Loves Company would prefer to have the area for curbside pickup. So we talked that through with the businesses, and that's how we arrived at the plan that we currently have.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Any questions? Amy, were you just, no, sorry. Any questions or comments from members of the public?
Christine Terry is raising her hand.
Oh, I didn't see it there. Terry Zigman, please. Oh, you were just off mute for a second, Terry.
Okay.
You're here now. I hear you.
So I was just curious about the accessibility issues. I'm concerned about that. I understand the need to have outdoor seating in all the restaurants, and I'm just wondering if anyone in the city has considered making more of the little pocket parks like you tried last year up near Fodang. So I'm just wondering if that's something that could be considered going forward, since we are trying to, have more outdoor seating. If we could have more of those pocket parks, that would make it more walker friendly and, people walking friendly and just more outdoor seating?
Yeah, Terry, I think that some of the precedents that we looked at in shutting down that area, we're kind of seeing it as a pilot project, doing this outdoor space. And a lot of the precedents we were looking at were actually pocket parks that are taken from Montreal in particular. We looked at some really nice precedents. So I do think that there is room for this to develop into more of that. Of course, right now we're trying to solve the immediate problem, and we are definitely considering ADA accessibility and considering routing it so that the sidewalk actually goes out around the seating, so there aren't conflicts between pedestrians walking through and people coming in and out of restaurants with food. So really trying to manage that circulation flow a little bit better to make it better for everyone.
Any other public comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the sidewalk permit for Papa Frank's.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heather. Next, we will have John Rauscher and Ray Coffey join us for a discussion on Myers Memorial Pool postponed opening.
Hey, everyone. So I think what I'll do is I'll start off first on the construction side and then pass over to Ray to talk about the operations piece of the Myers Pool. So yeah, unfortunately, we're here to talk about not opening the pool this coming summer, mainly due to the COVID-19 impacts to construction. So based on the current construction schedule, the ongoing state COVID-19 construction and operational restrictions, we are recommending that the pool not open for this season. The primary driver being the construction schedule and the COVID impact to that. So just to give some background on the construction schedule. So prior to the March 25th executive order, the project was on target for a June 5th construction completion. Unfortunately, with that March 25th executive order, that stalled construction, and we've been ramping up as the restrictions have been loosened a bit with crew sizes and what we're allowed to do on site. So currently we're at about 70% completion. The building is farther ahead. That should be actually wrapped up next 2 weeks or so, but it's really the pool area that is behind schedule. And as mentioned previously, the main cause for that is the primary subcontractor, the pool contractor, is an out-of-state contractor. So there's hurdles in bringing that contractor on site and meeting the 14-day quarantine requirements. So right now, the current schedule as of this week, the target construction completion is mid-August, unfortunately. And that does assume, there's some assumptions baked in that the pool subcontractor can get back on site, say June 15th. That is an unknown because we're basing that the restrictions will loosen up and that subcontractor can get back on site to do consecutive days work. I will say that sub has been very flexible with us. He's driven up for a day's worth of work here and there to try to wrap up and keep the project moving. But at this point, the critical path work to allow other contractors behind him, he's got multi-day work. So that's what's really stalling on the construction side right now. So unfortunately, with this mid-August completion date that's projected right now, we're still going to need at least a week for staff training after that. Some concurrent training with construction completion could probably happen, but really we'll probably still need a solid week after construction completion to look at the equipment and make sure we're comfortable operating it. So with that, it really only allows, 2 to 4 weeks of actual operation for users. That's assuming, a Labor Day weekend shutdown closure, which is typical. But we also kind of looked at if we extended the pool season until, say, September 19th, because this pool will have a heater system with it. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at right now. I think kind of with that, I'll pass along to Ray to talk about the operations side. Or actually, if we want to pause there, and if you have any questions on sort of the construction piece of it before we go to operations.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Do folks have construction questions, Jim?
At this point, do you anticipate the construction costs overall will be increased? Like, are they roughly the same and just delayed, or are we facing points of potential increase?
So right now, there's no projected increases on the construction costs. That's not to say that the construction manager could come back and request a change order because, there's more time on site for his staff. But right now, we're not projecting any cost increase.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So let's pivot to Ray to talk to us about the staffing operations side.
And sorry, my computer I knew that was going to happen the second we started talking about this. So I'm here on my phone. I can't see you all. So Christine, if you can play.
Yes, can do.
So yeah, as John mentioned, as we started to look at the operational details, we really were trying to focus on what's going to be a realistic start to the season. I think the last thing we want to do is rush here and get, we get the keys on the 17th and are trying to open, get the keys at 10 a.m. and trying to open at 11 a.m. I think that we just want to make sure that we're ready and safe. And I think especially in light of all the COVID restrictions that we're working within right now, it felt especially prudent to give ourselves at least a week to get to know the facility, have our staff ready, and just kind of model with that buffer in there. So, as John mentioned, as we looked at the operating schedule, it really did, worst case boil us down to a 2-week operating season, best case 4 weeks. And, again, I think based on the amount of, and that's assuming everything goes according to plan here with construction, which is a big assumption. So, I think a few of the concerns that really, I think ultimately steered us towards the recommendation you're seeing tonight is trying to staff up for that would be really difficult. I think bringing on staff for 2 to 4 weeks would be a real challenge. Finding folks that would be willing and able to do that. And then I think obviously the sort of specter of the COVID restrictions hanging over all of this is another big piece. We still don't know exactly what we're going to be working with in August in terms of the number of people we can actually get into the pool. And I had some real concerns personally. I think, other pools are feeling similarly around the state that if you move to a registration-based program where you've got to sign up for slots, you start to create some real inequities in who can access the pool. And I think for us as a community, it starts to create some tension between the folks that we're trying to serve broadly in the community and those who may have access to computers and scheduling and some of those other resources. So it's not where either John or I want it to be. I think we've really been pushing the contractor and really holding out hope here, but I think at this point, it's the smart recommendation for us operationally and will allow us to sort of circle the wagons and really come out of the gates in a very successful way next year for the first season.
Thanks, Ray. I just want to say that while this is a disappointing update, and it's certainly going to be disappointing for a lot of community members, there is good news here that we can still finish the construction project. Potentially good news that things stay on budget and, sets us up for success in the next year. And I appreciate the time that you put into thinking about what those, if we went forward, what that would look like if it was viable. I know that Mike would like to speak.
Thank you, Marilyn. John and Ray, I have, now that we're going to determine, pending on a vote, if we're not going to open the pool or not this year, I would like to make sure that the contractors and subcontractors still stay on schedule though, and make sure this pool, because it's going to be important to get the pool filled before the fall in order for us to see the full function of the pool. So we're not messing around next spring or summer to try to open a pool without it being tried first. And I think John and I have had the conversation that the pool will need to be full just for the liner purposes anyway. But sometimes, and I don't know whose job it's going to be, if it's city managers or John's, to stay on task with our contractors, because sometimes if they know that we're not going to open the pool, they might have another job pending that they want to get to instead of finishing our project. So I think it's very important and vital that they stay on task when they're able to, especially with the out-of-stater contractor. And then there was some mention about the warranty of the pool on our municipal infrastructure meeting, and it's in my I'm lost for words right now. In my past history of work is that when you complete a job, that's when the warranty will take in effect. Now that we're not opening, but if the job's 100% complete, and I think we should probably look into that just to make sure the warranty is in place for the pool. If they finish the pool on August 31st and it's 100%, they turn it over to the city, then I think that's when the warranties should start. And that could be very important if, say, that the electrical portion is done now, for instance, just for an example, their warranty can't start until the whole job is 100% done. And it's going to be disappointing for a lot of people that worked hard, like the pool committee. And I hope that we can reach out to those folks. And also, I'm not sure if the Winooski swim team has reached out to anyone down at City Hall or to Ray, but they might need a phone call too to start their planning. If I don't know if it's happened or not, but they might need a plan in place in order for them to compete this year at a different pool. I know last year the swim team, the wherever meet they had, like Burlington Country Club, for example, they were gracious enough to let Winooski have a home meet. And you know that they make money. They do the grilling, they sell the food or whatnot. They do the fundraising at home meets. So if that happens again this year, I want to publicly thank all the other communities that are going to help the Winooski swim team. And I'm also wondering if once the pool does get complete and it's operational, is there going to be a soft opening for, say, the Winooski swim team to see their facility, or the pool committee, or for, just for the city to go in, walk through and see how it's functioning? Is that a possibility as well? Thank you.
So I know how your hand is raised.
Whoops. I'm here. Yes. It's my understanding when you have a construction contract that until you finish the job, you don't get fully paid. So I'm not so sure why we should be concerned about making sure it's ready to be used. I mean, if they follow all of the details of the contract, that to me is the assurance that this is going to be able to be open whenever it can be opened. If it can't be opened this fall, then it can't be open.
Let's, John, do you want to speak to that? The construction and the warranty questions?
Yep, sure. So right now we're actually working with the project team and the engineer to put together an extension on the contract. So that would be end of August. And as Hal mentioned, payments are based on work complete. So there is an incentive there for the contractor to complete tasks. And we've, verbally, we've been reassured by the contractor that, they're going to do everything that they can to get this pool completed. They understand, the priority that it is for the community. So, and they've been a great partner, honestly, throughout this process. So I don't doubt that. And Mike brings up a really good point about the warranty. So as we've talked about potentially not opening this season with the project team. The warranty issue has been probably one of the first topics that we've started discussing. So at this point, at our last meeting, that was one of the main tasks for the project team to start reviewing what are the best options we have for warranties to protect the city and the equipment, the new equipment that we're going to have. What makes sense? Do we, some equipment, does it get extended warranty? Do we not start up some equipment because it's not necessary for final inspection? Those are all details we have to work through with the project team and the contractor, but it's a very good point, Mike.
And Christine, if I can just speak to a couple of Mike's questions. In terms of swim team, I think pending obviously tonight's decision by you all, we'll make outreach tomorrow and try to start to help that group find a new location. It is a swim team that's run through the YMCA. We've certainly been in touch with them throughout this, as they were the entity that we were sort of negotiating a lifeguarding contract with. So they're aware of the situation. They know that there was a big question mark about whether opening was going to be feasible. And I'm making an assumption, but I think have probably begun to look at other options, knowing that some of these questions were in place. So I will be following up with them tomorrow to kind of say, again, whatever the outcome of the decision is tonight, and sort of support them to find a new home or an extension on their temporary home for one more season. And then Mike, in terms of soft opening and sort of those types of events, quite honestly, those have been pretty far off the radar for us right now. I think we've been so focused on the kind of general public operations and just whether or not we're going to be able to get this thing open, that's something, I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of thinking about, but I think it's something we should start to consider, especially as we have a little more clarity about a date that we will get the keys turned over here and be completed. So I'd say stay tuned on that. Certainly if you have suggestions or thoughts, happy to hear them, but again, nothing on the calendar as of right now.
I do want to clarify, this is a discussion item. There's not a vote needed to be taken here. Staff is bringing us their operational recommendation. And this is a chance for us to ask questions and gain
Sure.
Are there other questions from council? Jim, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I keep raising my hand, lowering my hand. I can't do it. So there it goes. First of all, I know this has been a really hard recommendation I have to put together, so I want to appreciate the work done. I'm having a hard time envisioning spending $34,000 to fill the pool and having community members walk by and see a full pool and knowing that we can't let anybody in there. That's just a challenging thing to have to say. Like, I'm just thinking about the neighbors on my street that I will talk to and have to say why, and I totally get it. I do see that we're going to be realizing like $50,000 in savings in our budget because of this change. So one question I had was, what do we anticipate doing with that? And I'm imagining we're going to have ways to utilize savings in our budget going forward. But since we haven't had a discussion on what our anticipated needs are and budget reductions in the future, I'm just curious kind of how this reduction in budget will support the pool. The other question is kind of aligning with what Mike had suggested, is what other options are there for some sort of altered use of the pool in those 2 to 3 weeks? Because when I look at it from a budget, and I was purely looking at it from a budget perspective, I mean, we're spending an extra $1,000 a week to have it open over the original anticipated operating costs. Could we still operate a pool for a summer camp or for a swim team meet or for a very limited community access over 2 days? Are there any other options that we can do? And I also kind of want to acknowledge that closing down operations of this pool is eliminating employment in our city that we had anticipated to provide, and that there will be people who could have had jobs that won't have jobs as a result of this operational closure. So I'm curious if there are any creative options out there. I'd love to see some ideas, like once we spin up the pool and actually start running it? Is there something we can do with it while we have it filled and potentially operational?
So, want to speak to the financial piece?
Yeah, I want to speak to both of those. I think we certainly can, as Ray said, we and John, we've been so focused on simply the construction and the potential to operate legally or within the current executive orders and what that might mean. That's really been our focus to date. I think, Jim, you raised an excellent question about the cost savings in FY21. I think we have not had any conversations yet about what to do with those funds. Going into FY21, we're going to have a lot of, we, staff and the council are going to have a lot of discussions about managing our budget generally, given some of the revenue challenges we're going to see. I anticipate that we are going to see. Having said that, I do think there is absolutely a way we can dedicate those surpluses within that fund to pool specific things in the future, if that's what you also choose, given the comprehensive FY21 budget picture. So many more conversations to come about that, come from that over the next couple of months, I think. In terms of ideas for once we have a firm commitment from the contractor of when they will be done, given the executive order limitations, I think we certainly can put our heads together and see if there are creative things we can do for celebration, acknowledgement, soft launch, use, given that we will be operating it to test the systems. So more to come on that. I think the challenge with that is really ensuring that we have, we don't have anyone on staff right now with pool operations expertise. We were going to hire that. So how do you hire that for, a 2 to 4 week period is the real question mark. Ooh, you just bounced to the other side of my screen, Jim. So let us do some thinking about that and bring that back to you at a future discussion.
I just want to add to that, Jesse, to give staff permission, that I think that is a great idea to try to repurpose that time and find some value there. But given the workload that is on staff and the myriad of issues we're dealing with, I don't want that to be prioritized if there are. It seems to me like a smaller item when we're looking at the bigger picture of our overarching budget and the problems that we are going to be addressing in the near term. So I see maybe you're thinking about Thrive and you're like, here's an opportunity to leverage that space, right? If there's some synergy there. But I wouldn't want to, right. Just want to give you permission that we know there's a lot of work on staff's plates and every single thing is not the highest priority.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Actually, 2 more things. The community space in the pool, is that going to be available for rental for, I think, what's the gathering up to 25 now? Are we going to utilize that space once that building is online this year or this winter, if people need a space to have a kid's birthday party or whatever occasion it is the city on board with that, or are they going to keep that whole area shut down?
Yeah, no, our hope certainly is that, that's a 4-season room, Mike. So we set that up to be available for use throughout the year. Much like the rental spaces that we have had available at O'Brien Center and Senior Center. So yeah, we hope once the building's kind of open and safe that we can operate that within the governor's orders for sure. Okay, thank you. And I don't know if my comment about keeping the contractors on task was implied that they're not professional. I know I met the contractors over there and they are nothing but professional. I know some of the local subcontractors that are there. They're very reputable companies. By no means, it just had to be stated on record that I want to make sure that someone keeps the contractors on task, even though we're not opening the pool. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, understood.
Any other questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? All right. Well, like I said, this is a discussion item not on here for approval. And just thanks for providing this this update for us and giving us a chance to ask questions. We will move next to item E, which is another discussion item. This is COVID-19 budget impacts, which Angela will introduce.
Hello again, bringing back to you a similar analysis to what you saw last month, just to keep council up to date with what we're seeing for performance in FY20. So the first thing that you've been presented with is a comparative analysis of the revenues this year to the revenues last year. As you can see, we're pretty close on the taxes. We are slightly under where we would expect to be, but we'll definitely talk about that more a little bit later in this memo. Water and sewer charges are under where they would be normally, but that is likely due to the extended deadline. We see those payments coming in daily. So we expect that to be about where it was last year on May 15th, on June 15th. We are not expecting significant delinquencies there. Rental registry is on par percentage-wise with collections this year compared to last year. However, it is down in total dollars collected, which could have an impact on their bottom line. By far, the most concerning thing is our on-street parking budget. We are far below where we were this time last year, between 20 and 30%. And it's likely that that is going to increase to about $80,000 total deficit compared between the 2 years if we continue to waive the on-street parking fees through that date. This decrease in revenue would cause us to dip into reserves by about $54,000. The on-street parking fund does have significant reserve balances of $635,000, so we are able to absorb that. However, that is a long-term concern because those funds were earmarked as part of the Abenaki garage project. One of the items that is going to be of concern in FY21 is the local options tax. As of the third quarter collections this year, we have met our FY20 budgeted number, but because we were seeing such high performance in the first 2 quarters when we budgeted for FY21, we increased that number. And at the current rate of collection, it's not likely that we will reach that level of revenue next year should this continue into the new fiscal year. And then property taxes, as we mentioned in May, we had significant payments made by residents in the community. We are currently sitting at 1.56% delinquency overall in the city. It's about $260,000. With that current amount, we would need to dip into reserves by about $35,000, which is less than the reserves that council has allocated towards projects in the HVAC for City Hall and some work for the Community Services Department. So this puts us in a really good position to start next year before considering any outstanding receivables that have not yet been paid. Does anybody have questions?
Thanks for the update, Angela. I just want to make a comment regarding the parking revenue. You know, as we look at the idea of trying to use some of the parking spaces for outdoor seating, that's going to tighten up the number, reduce the number of spaces that we have available, right? And I would imagine that you are already having these discussions potentially and maybe with the business community, but I think there's some logic to bringing back the metered parking as people are coming back to our businesses to make sure that there are spaces for everyone that wants to partake. It sounds like, you know, I'm really happy to see that you've been able to put us in a really resilient position financially, and very thankful to folks who continue to pay their property taxes as they are able to. It sounds like we're definitely going to have a question in the future about the parking fund and the reserves, and those local options taxes, which we have sort of philosophically dedicated to capital projects in the past. So nothing to dig into right now, but wanted to put that out there for folks.
If I can make a quick shadowing comment to you, Christine, on that last point. Later in your agenda are 2 opportunities to look for outside funding for the Abenaki garage. The more opportunity we have to bring in other money into that project, the less concern we have about the parking fund reserves, i.e. we're trying to fill that gap. Having said that, that doesn't work if we have no parking enforcement throughout FY21. So it is a problem in FY20. It will become a much larger problem in FY21 as we look at how long this pervades. I also think it's important to note that I think I agree with you, Christine, there is some logic to opening as business reopens. I think the other reality is that if business is opening at 25% capacity or 50% capacity for a long period of time, that is going to translate into visitors into our community. So while we may see some revenue uptick, it's likely not to be the full revenue uptick that we otherwise would have experienced just because of foot traffic.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Amy?
I just wanted to flag for council and hopefully verify from Angela. I believe that a portion of downtown Winooski's budget is paid for by the parking fund as well. So it sounds like that could be a potential problem in the future. It sounds like we have enough in reserves to cover it, but I just wanted to make the rest of council aware that is a source of their funding stream. Another source is sidewalk fees. So just wanted to put that on folks' radar. And Angela, just wanted to get a sense from you if we think that that is going to be problematic.
So the $12,500 payment from on-street parking has been made to the business association already this fiscal year, and we're set to make it in the fall. I don't think that the $12,500 will be an issue. This year, and I have spoken to Meredith about this, we are not collecting any sidewalk fees. So that would normally be between $5,500 and $6,500 that would go to the organization that we will not be sending this year.
Has that been communicated to Meredith?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Do other folks have questions? Any questions from the public?
So can I make one closing comment?
Yeah.
Mayor. So I just want to really recognize Angela for staying so on top of these numbers and revenue. She looks at this on a day-by-day basis and can always tell us exactly where we stand. Well, and so thank you very much for that. What was presented today is really a budget report. Just want to, again, remind us of a conversation we had at a previous meeting about cash flow. From a cash flow perspective, we continue to do very well and have made our last required payment to the school for FY20. So they have been made whole, and we're hopeful that the cash flow we have on hand now will carry us through the next couple of months until we figure out when we'll be able to issue tax bills, given state decisions. So kudos to Angela for ensuring that we are as financially healthy as we currently are.
Thank you. So we will move to our next item F for discussion. This is our Chittenden Solid Waste District FY21 budget update. So we have Sarah Reeves with us from CSWD, and I think our rep is on the line. Wait, did she just go? Oh, Bryn Oakley. You switched to video, and I was looking for it.
Yeah.
So I will pass it to Sarah.
Great. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the time. And thank you for getting us on your agenda so quickly. It's just, I think like everybody, some of our processes have been delayed significantly, so I appreciate you squeezing us in tonight. So as you mentioned, my name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And CSWD, for those who aren't familiar, is essentially it's a regional municipality. So we are made up of the 18 communities in Chittenden County, and we are responsible for managing the waste that is generated within the county by residents, businesses, institutions, etc. And this year's packet that you were sent does look a little bit different, and it is reflective of the differences that we, just as you were talking about, have all faced in the past, just last quarter. So what we wanted to make sure that we included this year was exactly what we sent to our board, so that you would have an understanding of what went into the development of the budget, and then not just the development of the budget, but then the redevelopment of the budget, because we had what we were thinking we were going to present in January or February turned out to be somewhat different, as you can imagine. So there will be additional detail pages on our website as we continue to kind of get through the formatting issues that we had. But what you were included this year, which was different, was a description of kind of who we are as a district, because we do get that question regularly, and then how we're funded. So that's really where I want to start, is our sources of revenue. And the first thing that I like to tell our member communities is that CSWD doesn't send you a bill. So you won't find a line item for the Chittenden Solid Waste District in your budget, because we don't charge anything to our members for our services as a district, as a regional entity. So we don't do any per capita assessments, no fees. We don't take any tax dollars directly from the cities and towns. So when some of the other communities ask, well, what is our bill? It's zero. So because you are part of the district, we exist for you, and there's no charge. Our revenue comes from mainly three sources. Our solid waste management fee, which is essentially a tax on the trash that is destined for disposal up at Coventry, and that is $27 per ton, and that's charged to the haulers. So that's a fee that they pay when they get to the landfill, or they're billed from that disposal. We also receive revenue from user fees or tipping fees, and those are the fees that are charged at the point of disposal for the facilities that we manage. So our drop-off centers, the materials recovery facility, our compost facility, and the environmental depot. And then material sales. So those are a revenue that's generated from the products that we make. So compost, topsoil, local color paint, the recycling, the baled recyclables that go to the MRF, and then a small amount of products that we purchase on behalf of our members and then resell, such as compost bins. So those are the main sources of our revenues. We do have a regulatory feature as well to our charter, and we receive some small amount for licensing and for fines when levied. So in your packet, again, you received exactly what our board received. So I divided the information up into basically 3 or 4 sections. So the revenue snapshot, expenses snapshot, talked about the cuts that we made, and I talked about the bottom line and kind of what that means for the district. So essentially the fees are remaining the same. So you're seeing that in our revenues, the tip fees or the user fees are seeing a 10% change. That's because we had already increased our fees at the materials recovery facilities. So we're not increasing our fees there going into fiscal 21, nor are we increasing the fee at Green Mountain Compost. That will also remain the same. The area that we're still a little bit in flux on is the fees at the drop-off centers. When we shut everything down for COVID reasons back at the end of March, and then reopened just the one facility in Williston, we went to a flat fee system versus paying by the bag or by the unit, and we reduced our services. That was done for safety, for for safety issues, for metering, to make sure that we could properly staff, and then to also ensure that people weren't making unnecessary trips, that they were consolidating their materials and just kind of only coming when really necessary. And what the flat fee actually did was, if you were used to bringing in 2 bags at $2.75 and you waited at 4, you actually ended up saving $1. So we've gotten a lot of interesting feedback that customers took to that pretty quickly once they did the math, and they enjoyed that. So all along, that is we've been viewing that as a temporary system. So as we go along and we start to reopen our facilities, and we're doing that in a very deliberative, and measured way, eventually we will. The goal is to go back to our old pre-March fee system. But for right now, the flat fee system will be in place at the drop-off facilities. And we currently have 2 drop-off centers open, Williston and Essex. And we are looking to reopen another facility on Friday, and then most likely 2 weeks from there, another facility, and possibly 2 weeks from there, another facility. So we are slowly getting back up to as much capacity as we can, while maintaining that the staffing security, which means making sure that I always have enough staff to cover the shifts should folks become ill. And we haven't had anyone have the illness at any of our employees, which has been phenomenal, knock on wood. And then also to make sure that we're maintaining that physical distancing at our drop-off centers, because that truly is critical. So we need additional staffing to help maintain that. But that is the plan, to continue to reopen and provide additional services. Again, going through the memo that I sent to the board, as I mentioned, the revenues are essentially the same. We're seeing an increase in the tip fees, again, because of the MRF. And the recycling has continued to be strong, even with some of the shutdowns and the commercial and institutional side. We're seeing additional materials, for example, on the redemption items, with redemption centers. Some were not open, some were slowly reopening, and not being able to take them back to the markets. We've seen a continued large increase in that material there as well. On the expenses side, we are looking at, and again, these are the numbers as we know them today. Huge caveat. We're going to have to be looking at our numbers, as you all will, month to month, quarter to quarter, making adjustments, knowing that it's a fairly fluid situation. But again, looking at expenses of about $11.8 million on revenue of just over 12. And again, when we were looking at the revenue, our assumptions on solid waste management fee, that $27 ton tax on trash disposed, we factored in, significant decreases in commercial material, only moderate decreases in residential. People will continue to generate trash from recycling. We factored in no events at all this year. So those tons went away. We reduced the amount of tons for food scraps. We took a look at the institutions. We talked to other large generators of material, and we've adjusted our estimates down quite a bit from there, knowing that trash is going to continue to be made. The large increase on our expense side is in materials management. When we say materials management, that's the transportation of these materials either to market or to disposal. And we're budgeting a significant increase in cost to transport glass and processed glass aggregate from the MRF, so the bottles and jars, onto market. And we have to, unfortunately, budget about $300,000 for that, which is a huge increase in our expenses there. Following our expenses, though, before we wrapped everything up, I had our staff go back and take a new look. They had already submitted their budgets, and we went back and we made some cuts, similar to probably what other municipalities have done. Looked at wages and benefits. We looked at anything that was considered, extra nice to have, not essential, travel and training slashed across the board, not eliminated. Subsidies for grants, some of the grants were eliminated. The one that I'm making a point of making sure all communities know is not eliminated was the community cleanup fund. So those funds were not touched. Those are yours. They're literally in the bank and are available as a reimbursement grant. You just reach out to Bryn and say, hey, I've got a project. What do you think? And then she would submit that. And those funds are still there. So that was not touched at all. But things like,
recently this past year, the funding was used for offsetting Green Up Day collection costs last May, as well as container purchases over by the O'Brien Center. So they have been used. And Olivia has been great to work with, as well as Ray.
Thank you for mentioning the projects that were done in Winooski. So that is, so every year there's a little bit more that gets put into your bank. So it does build up. So if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And it does build up to a certain cap. So it's there to be used. So those were not cut. Those remain. But other things, again, advertising, other grants, those were cuts. Some of those do represent some cuts to some services. But we tried to really maintain as much as possible the level of service that we know that our communities have come to rely on from us. So, again, it was pretty much things that we are very realistic and said, are we really going to do X, Y, and Z? And realized, no, we weren't. So those we were cut. And then on the capital side, we divided our capital into first priority and second priority. So of the first priority items that we are keeping front of mind are the improvements that we want to make to Green Mountain Compost and that process. And Green Mountain Compost has been going like crazy. Sales have been amazing as people are planting victory gardens and planting, getting into gardening this year. This is across the country. Compost sales have been through the roof. So that's been a huge success story. And so, we've already made some efficiencies there, and we're going to continue to invest in the compost facility and in that program as we go into the next fiscal year. Some of the other projects we're going to, put on the back burner, but compost we feel very strongly about continuing with. And as you mentioned in your own budget update, we do anticipate a very small shortfall in our budget this year. And again, crystal ball at this point, but a very small shortfall of approximately 0.7%. But because we're a municipality, we're not, a for-profit entity, we do need to net to zero. So to get to zero, we're looking at transferring approximately $80,000 from our solid waste management fee rate stabilization fund to the general fund. And that rate stabilization fund is there so that we don't have to keep going back year after year after year to increase that tax on trash. It is designed to offset those costs. So we haven't had to dip into the fund ever. So there's almost $3 million there. So the $80,000 will not really make a dent, but that's what it's there for, is to make sure that we don't have to unnecessarily increase that tax and that we can weather that storm. And that's my general overview, and I'd love to open it up to any questions you may have. I know this is an odd year, so I will do my best to answer whatever questions you might have.
Thanks, Sarah. And just for some context, Council, as a member municipality, we could vote to approve this. There's an expectation that we vote to approve this. However, this is our chance to flag any concerns we have or ask questions to get more information. So thank you for bringing us this update, Sarah, and Bryn, for your continued service on the board. I appreciate the level of detail of what was shared in the packet, what you've walked through, and the approach that your board has taken, like the full board, to really be mindful of the financial situation that folks are in, make some hard choices to make this work for our communities. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Do folks have any questions for Sarah or Bryn? All of us were sitting here last year, so I think we have some familiarity with the funding mechanism and such.
Awesome.
Are there any questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none. So we put this item on for discussion tonight. I suspect we will want to put it on for approval at our next meeting, based on no large concerns surfacing here. All right, well, thank you so much again for coming in, both of you, and for talking.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sarah.
both.
Thank you, Bryn.
This will move us to our next item, item G. This is our 2020 Policy Priorities and Strategies Recovery Plan. So staff introduced this to us at our last meeting, and we want to dig in a little more. Jesse, I don't know if you want to provide any additional intro since last time.
Sure. So the only change we have made since the last document we presented to you in the draft recovery plan, just the draft for the next 6 months of operation, are that I changed the things that we had added to this as new items into red, so you could see what was what was new from, as opposed to things that were continuing from last year's priority plan. Almost all of them solely focus on COVID response, all of the red, with one addition that I want to call out. Well, two additions that I want to call out. One new red thing is under municipal infrastructure. This is to consider a citywide traffic calming table, or a citywide traffic calming policy. We are getting requests. Mike alluded to one in his council update earlier about one-way streets and calming measures on individual streets. And we are concerned that if we don't have a citywide approach to this, that we could kind of screw up traffic flow patterns in the city. So we are recommending looking into that in the next couple of months. It's also something that CCRPC has suggested they have some capacity to help us with. And then the only other new non-COVID thing is under operations improvements. Every year, Angela leads a process to do a fraud risk assessment. And we have historically worked on kind of ticking away some things that come up during that assessment, but haven't specifically called it out in this document. So this year we do want to specifically call out priorities identified in the fraud risk assessment in this document. But other than that, the discussion today is really meant to be your response, your feedback to this draft recommendation from staff.
Thank you, Jesse. I noticed both of those new items and was wondering about them, so I'm glad you called that out. And I would say that that traffic calming policy sounds in line with a lot of the discussion that's been happening at the Planning Commission over the past year. So if CCRPC has some capacity there, I think that could be a real benefit. I think we sort of, at the last meeting when this was introduced, we had some general support for being tightly focused on our priorities and for focusing on COVID recovery. I think the question tonight is there anything on here that we don't think is high priority or anything that we think is missing? Right, so we had our last year's priorities list. Is there something that did not get continued that you feel strongly should be? And keeping in mind that we would revisit our priorities in a few months from now to see if we can sort of expand our focus. Does anyone on council have any specific? Sure, Jim.
I'm trying to decide which of your questions to answer. I guess some things, kind of comments that I had on this as I had more time to reflect on it, and I want to appreciate staff giving us multiple rounds of time to look at this. I do fully support this more focused look at the 6-month scale and trying to be very parsimonious and focused on what we can do. I think some of the issues that arose for me, not issues, some of the things I wanted to ask more about were around kind of the focus on recovery of our community. And I think this plan seems to focus a lot on kind of maintaining the city operations and then supporting our downtown Winooski businesses. I'm curious what we can do for, what the kind of thinking is for how we help residents with other needs around health and safety, childcare, getting back to work, and being able to afford rent and property taxes in the city. And I know that we have fewer levers to pull on that, but I'm curious if there's any other ways that we can be looking at supporting residents, but also in businesses outside of the downtown Winooski zone. So those are two things that kind of popped into my mind as I was looking at this. And again, I'm recognizing that these are issues that are being addressed at the federal and state level, and we may not be able to pull on those, but I'm curious if there are any opportunities here to expand some of the good work proposed around grants with downtown Winooski to all of our businesses, and if there's any opportunities with the Housing Trust Fund to begin thinking about repurposing that for supporting rent payers and property owners who can't afford to make critical upgrades to their properties. So I'm just curious about some of those, if the staff has any thoughts on those, or if those just seem to not in the right bin, like not something that the city can address, but something we have to advocate for at the state level.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
So my initial response is, I think, Heather, I'm channeling you here. Just what initial response is, downtown Winooski does support the entire business community in Winooski. Heather, is that what you were going to jump in and say?
There were two things I was going to jump in and say.
Go ahead.
So supporting the Northern Border Regional Commission, that's for the entire city. So for businesses in the entire city. And in response to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, immediately after doing the repurposing of the small business loan, I started thinking about, okay, what can we do with the Housing Trust Fund? And did a few calculations on that. And with 60% of our community being made up of renters, if you were to break that down across that 60%, we could use up our entire Housing Trust Fund and give each household $180. So I think we have to think strategically about how those funds can be used to help create further opportunities for affordable housing and can help to support ongoing development that then will add to our tax base. So it's not that it is something that definitely I at least have thought about a little bit. And I think it's going to be more an intermediate term strategic approach to helping our renters. In terms of our homeowners, I didn't look at it so much in that sense, except through the home improvement program. And I think as we get that up and running, it will be a resource for people. But again, it's such a small amount of money. We have to be so completely careful about our strategy to make it as impactful as we can.
But in a broader response, Jim, I think you are right. We have really focused on, given that we still have 17 folks on furlough and, are working from home and things like that, we have focused on maintaining our municipal operations first. I don't think our team has done enough thought in this moment to think about what other efforts we could do to do broader based community recovery. So if that is something that you all are interested in, I think we need to go back to the drawing board a little bit and think about that and bring you some proposals.
Well, I wanted to add too that I believe the governor's recovery package does include support for people who are unable to make rent payments. I think it behooves us to become familiar with that and see how we can be supportive in connecting folks there. I think it's on us as we approach budget decisions to think about what what impacts that's going to have on folks' taxes and how we feel about that. I also, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think because we do offer Thrive childcare and are thinking about how to bring that back in accordance with, the mandates that are currently in place, I think we are participating in that childcare discussion, and maybe having more discussion about that. I see Ray's popped up.
Hello. I think, Jim, I appreciate you calling that out. And I think just for you to know kind of where my head was in not calling that out explicitly here, I think, Christine, you nailed it. We're really viewing our childcare effort now as, Thrive at least as baseline operations. So that's not something that we explicitly called out here. And again, by virtue of the fact that we are dealing with a pretty complex environment right now, doing a lot of work with the state, I think some of that broader advocacy work is really starting to trickle into our baseline operations. So I want to be clear, that's not something we're taking our eye off of. And I think especially in light of recent childcare closures at St. Mike's and UVM, we're keenly aware of the capacity issue that's starting to really impact the system. And I think, by virtue of being part of that system, we have to be part of the solution. So we're definitely going to keep working on that over the next 6 months and beyond. But, I think, again, that's right now our focus for Thrive and for childcare is really getting our program stood up and getting those operational details locked in. And then I think starting to pivot towards some of those broader systems issues once we've got that piece locked down.
I do think it is a discussion to be had, getting clarity on what the state is providing through their recovery package and then seeing where we plug into that. To be transparent, I have not gotten deeply into that yet. It is on my to-do list.
I also, just in mulling this over, since you said it, Jim, I also think that, which is always dangerous to do actively in a meeting, I think you bring up a really good point about this document as a roadmap and communications tool to our community of what we're prioritizing. And I think we could do a better job in this document, just listening to, what Christine and Ray and Heather have said, being explicit about the things we are doing to positively impact the health and safety of our residents as we come out of this. And I don't think we've well articulated that here. So I think we should go back and take a stab at saying what we are currently doing that you've heard here to address that, to make this a more of a communications tool almost. Christine?
Yeah, and I would appreciate that, because I read it and it seems like it's very focused on our businesses, and I know that we're doing a lot for our residents, and I know that there's a lot of need there. So I think when we can articulate a number of good examples that have already come up and how we can plug in and where we fit and where our municipality sits within the larger effort towards recovery, I think would be really helpful. And it would be, as a strategic direction, I think that would help us make clear what we're doing with taxpayer funds here, where we see potential for impact.
Hal, I see you have your hand raised.
Sure. I think this is a great document, but for me, what's missing is any thought about mental health and the wellness of our community as we come out of this. I think that's something, it's always on the back burner, but it could be an issue. And then how do we partner with other entities out there that can provide resources and support as we identify needs around mental health? So I just want to put that out there.
Yep, good point. I think that can be part of our kind of revisiting the drawing board on this. Thank you.
Heather?
I just want to say that what Jesse and Jim were discussing about, telling a better story that is a more complete story of what we're doing is something that has come up in my conversations with the business community as well, where I've been explaining some of the things that we're working on and trying to do and where some of the funding goes. For example, some of the funding that goes to downtown Winooski. And I was told in several of those meetings, you need to communicate that to everybody. People would support it so much more if they knew what the city was actually doing. And, with an understanding that obviously we have a lot of things available and we discuss things at city council meetings, but not everyone can make it to them. So us telling that story and putting it out into the community was raised by the business community as something that we could do a little bit better.
Thoughts or questions from other members of council?
Just jump in, Jim.
All right. I wanted to just double check on the parking study that was proposed to CCRPC in the Unified Work Plan. Have we heard whether that's, I thought by this council meeting we would know if we had received that part of the work plan. I'm asking just because of the relationship with the calming study, if there is capacity at CCRPC. We have many longstanding requests around parking, and I want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity to get their help on parking and instead move on to the traffic calming study.
Yes, I believe all the UPWP applications were fully funded this year. And unfortunately, Eric has popped off, but I'm 98% sure that is true. John, do you know? Good. John knows that's true.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. That was funded. That doesn't usually start till July, but the traffic calming policy is a much smaller sort of piece that we'll be working on with a potentially a staff liaison at CCRPC. The parking study is much bigger sort of, that's why it's a UPWP application, much bigger sort of program.
All right, this is the last one, I promise. Census wasn't listed. I think I just saw something going out on Front Porch Forum after writing that note down this morning, but just curious if, I know we talked about this last time, but if we can articulate what we're doing to support a full count in the census as part of the net, because that comes in. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one other thing, which is around mail-in voting. Do we need to be doing anything to be prepared for a potential mail-in voting situation in November, since that falls within the 6-month time period?
So Jim, I can speak to the census quickly. I think part of the thinking and kind of phasing that out, looking into next year's work plan is just that I know they're working to kind of wrap up their work earlier in the fiscal year. So it felt like it's going to sort of bridge over and not extend through the full year. So we're continuing to work with them. I will be honest, I have not looked at our numbers in the last 2 weeks, probably since we last discussed it. But it's a good flag for me to go do that tomorrow and check in. As they start to pick up their ground game, I think we are going to be very much active with them in supporting that effort.
Hal?
Sure. With regards to all mail-in voting for November, my Government Operations Committee is awaiting a bill to come over from the Senate, and we're going to expedite it through to get it approved to have all mail-in voting for for November. And those costs will be fully borne by the state.
So it sounds like we are on board with this document. You can move forward with these priorities, but we would also like to see an additional iteration that highlights, these other areas that we've talked about, which could spur more discussion and potential reprioritization.
Sure.
Are there any more questions or comments from council?
I would just say thank you again. I know that asking for a rewrite is kind of a crummy thing to do, but I also just want to appreciate how much work has already gone into this. And I went and looked at how this compared to what had been proposed last year, and you're still carrying a lot forward from what was requested by this group at a different time. So I just want to acknowledge that you're already choosing to take on a lot and also doing a lot of other stuff you're not even naming. So thank you for putting this together, being willing to engage on multiple occasions on this. I really appreciate it.
I think this is a pretty important document and what keeps us all kind of going in the same direction. So spending a little bit of time here and making sure it's right and making sure it's right for the community to tell that story is really important. So happy to bring it back a number of times to get it right. In conversation.
I did just want to quickly ask if there are any public comments or questions here before we move along. So we will move on to item H. This is up for approval. This is a grant application for Child Development Division Restart Funding for Thrive, which Ray will speak to.
Yeah, and Kate, this is your big moment. You've been waiting. Yeah, so Kate Anderson, who is our Children and Family Programs Manager, has joined us. Kate, I can't see you on the screen, so I'm sorry, but thank you for hanging in here and being here. So I'm going to just speak kind of broadly to the grant that we were fortunate enough to secure. If there are detailed questions about kind of the operational side of any of the implications, Kate is really our expert there, so I'm 100% going to defer. But Kate went ahead and was really proactive with this funding source when it came out. She was kind of hovering over the send button really like the day that it was available. And it is a formula grant, so we were able to put in kind of our anticipated enrollment numbers, number of kids served, and we're able to secure almost $12,000 for the Thrive program to support our reopening. So the goal with that funding right now is to really look at the increased staffing costs that we're going to have to take on for the program because of the expectations up not only from the state, but also within the school building. Our student to staff ratio has changed quite a lot. Normally we run class sizes of 2 to 3 staff and up to 26 kids. This year we're going to be restricted to 8 children and 2 staff in separate pods. So we are seeing a pretty significant increase in the number of staff we need to bring on board. Additionally, Kate often serves, or her position often serves in ratio, meaning she is one of the adults counted towards our student staff number. But given the increase in the regulatory environment and some of the expectations and safety precautions we're going to be taking, Kate's going to have less time available in her week to be in ratio. So that's an additional kind of staffing cost burden that we're modeling into our budget for the summer. So long and short, this grant funding is really critical for us to run a financially solvent program this summer. As we proposed initially, our initial schedule of full and half weeks, we would, given this funding, be able to run a program that is break even or better. We are still, I just want to put it out, we are still working with the school right now to look at the possibility of extending our hours. Their summer program is going to have a lot smaller capacity because of some of these size restrictions, group size restrictions. And so we're trying to work with them to figure out solutions that'll get as many children served this summer as possible. So I did call that out in the memo. That's still an active conversation. I know Kate was exchanging emails today with the school, but I did want to call that out as a possibility that we're exploring at the moment. But either way, these funds are pretty mission critical for us right now.
Well, thank you for your work in looking into this and searching for a way to support the ongoing care. I'm curious, we've talked about underutilization of Thrive in the past. I'm curious if that situation has changed at all, if there are more folks that are looking or interested, or if you have a sense of that. Like, will we be able to serve more children than previously?
Kate, do you want to?
Yeah, so what we applied for the state would be a maximum of 40 kids. Right now, we already have more than 3 classrooms of 8 kids enrolled. So an average of like 25-ish kids enrolled, and that was without doing really any promotion. So those were families who are already familiar with the program, but also we've been getting some through the school. So I think ultimately we may end up serving as many families as we did it like last summer when we were sort of at a lower enrollment for Thrive. But the appetite is definitely there. I definitely haven't been doing really any promotion, and we've been getting people who were not familiar with Thrive at all in the past being referred to us by the school or by like a social worker who need care for their kids.
Is that something we're considering trying to market to increase enrollment, or are you at the moment focused on just sorting out how to support who we already know?
No,
I think, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I think we're kind of waiting to solidify a few details with the school before we promote, because we don't want to be trying to draw in huge amounts of people that will later have to turn away or disenroll. But yeah, we're definitely hoping to do some promotion and if we can get up to that number of 40 kids.
Thank you.
If I can add just another sentence or two, I think it's important to remember that the Thrive team is a team that was almost fully furloughed through this process. And we are extraordinarily fortunate to have not only Kate coming back per her schedule as of today, thank you, Kate, but also 4 of our Thrive teachers coming back. Part of that stat, like, could we, you know, I put some pressure on Ray to say, like, could we up that number a lot more? And that's a significant challenge when you're trying to hire a bunch of new teachers in this climate, and when we're trying to do the space planning around the school construction project. So meeting our numbers goals of last year in this new climate is, I think, a pretty significant win for our community, and really kudos to Kate for putting that system in place to be able to do that this year under these conditions.
Thanks for adding that context. Jim?
And I just guess I feel a lot of uncertainty around what's going to happen with summer camps and schools. And I'm sure that, you know, Kate and Ray, you're deep in this, but as a parent who has not yet withdrawn from any summer camps, I'm still also not fully committed to going to any either. And I know that there's a divide there's going to be a divide in our community between people who maybe have a choice and people who don't. And I'm hoping we can serve them all. But I guess I just want to flag that we should expect some uncertainty on the demand side. Like, we know there are people who need it, but there may be people who choose not to take it because of their level of comfort with risk and their expectations for their family. So I guess I just want to throw in that moderating expectation, speaking from my experience as a parent and talking with others who would be utilizing this program, and knowing that this is a discussion that no one really knows yet what their answer is. And we all have to make that decision within the next 2 weeks. But so I just want to commend you for getting the numbers that you have. And also I want to prepare us for some, like, we can do everything possible on the city side and still have parents who decide at the last minute to say no. So I think that I just want to be sensitive and open to that eventuality as well.
Yep. And I think, you know, Jim, it's a great point. And I think certainly Kate would echo this, but we've certainly seen kind of the enrollment ebbing and flowing. You know, we've had some families register and then disenroll, or, you know, not register right away and then come on. So I think we're seeing that uncertainty in the enrollment process for sure, and are definitely tracking that. But, you know, a lot of the families that we're working with are families we've had for a long time. I think we've been able to have good communication with them, and hopefully are putting out, you know, a product and a program that they're feeling is really safe and well organized. And to the best we can, we're going to do everything we can to keep kiddos safe and healthy. And I mean, that's what we're trying to structure. So it's tough. I mean, I share as a parent of camp and school age kids, I share that concern too. You know, we're having that same wrestling match here at home of what are we going to do? So it's a tough one, but I think that's another advantage, I think, of sort of sticking towards that goal of 40 kids is it's not 100. You know, I think we're being measured, we're being responsible, and we can effectively serve that many, but we're not biting off more than we can chew, I think, either.
Other questions from council? This is a grant application, but we are clearly diverging into update on operations.
Yep.
Any public comment? Think we have any members of the public remaining here? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the grant application, Child Development Division Restart Funding for Thrive.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hal, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you for your work. Thank you to the Thrive team for what they have sacrificed for the city on furlough.
So great to have you back, Kate.
So our next item I is another approval grant application for U.S. Economic Development Administration grant application for Abenaki Garage, which Heather will introduce to us.
Yep, so I'm here tonight to request your authorization to apply for the USEDA Public Works Grant. This is for support of the development of 17 Abenaki Way. And these were grants that require a 50-50 match in most cases. And the average size of the grant award is approximately $1.4 million. In our case, the approved bond vote authorizing up to a $9.7 million general obligation bond can serve as the municipal match for a request of up to $9.7 million. Although actually I'm not going to be asking for that much. I think likely it'll be between $2 and $3 million that I would be asking for. And the funding support can go toward construction of the Abenaki Garage, improved entry to Cassavant Park at the terminus of Winooski Falls Way, possibly removal of the power pole and undergrounding of utilities between Cassavant Park and the downtown district. I will say that this is a long shot of a grant. There are only 80 to 120 of these given nationwide. And I've just heard today that the priority is going to be on areas hardest hit by COVID-19. However, with that being said, in Vermont, there are fewer shovel-ready projects, and I think that we do stand a good chance as far as competing with other Vermont projects. So I will write the best grant I possibly can, and we'll see if we can get some funding in to help support this, given your permission.
Thanks, Heather. Any questions from council on this one? I see no members of the public there. I would entertain a motion to approve the grant application for U.S. Economic Development Administration for Abenaki Garage.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. And finally, item J is another Heather item for approval, a resolution authorizing the application for a Vermont sales tax reallocation for the development of the property at 17 Abenaki Way.
Yep, again, this is support for the 17 Abenaki Way project. And what happens with these is developers apply jointly with municipalities for the reallocation of the sales taxes paid on construction materials. So in a city the size of Winooski with a population of 7,500 or less, all taxes paid on sales of construction materials in excess of $100,000 for the project may be reallocated to the municipality in support of that project. So again, some of the same things that I discussed with the EDA grant could be covered with the sales tax reallocation. And I've included a resolution authorizing this application as that's the way that they prefer it for the sales tax reallocation program. So that's in your council packet.
Any questions from council on this one? I just wanted to call out that I saw that reading through the scoring criteria, it looked like having a well-scoped project really helps you here. And so just wanted to recognize that having good staff on our team here in Winooski helps us get more outside funding, and appreciate the effort that you all are making to try to find those sources for us. Because our projects are very well scoped, and I've seen some in other municipalities that aren't as good. So I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution authorizing the application for Vermont sales tax reallocation for the development of the property at 17 Abenaki Way.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Wait, I heard Mike. Was there another person?
So moved.
Okay, sorry. Motion by Jim, second by Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
This brings us to the end of our meeting. I would entertain a motion to, sorry, Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mayor Law, I think I made a mistake. I voted on, I wasn't at last week's meeting or our last council meeting. My apologies for that.
Yeah.
And I voted on the
minutes.
The minutes. So Janet, I'm sorry, make your job harder, but I just caught myself on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We should have pulled that out as a separate item. Jesse, should we retake that vote?
Yeah, what I would recommend is you just make a motion now to pull the minutes off the agenda, off the consent agenda, and then re-vote on the minutes. So make a motion first to pull the minutes off the consent agenda.
Would someone move to remove the minutes of our council meeting on May 18th from the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Hal. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
And now re-vote just on the minutes.
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve the city council minutes of May 18th?
So moved.
So moved.
Second. Well, go ahead.
Motion by Jim, second by Amy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those abstaining.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. No, that was my error. Thank you. So, would someone like to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I have to start remembering this abstaining thing, how this happened with you in the communities grant. So,
yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great
Good
week,
night.
These are
everybody.
awesome. Thank you.
Aye. I'll take care.
Bye.
Bye now.